Welcome to Kopachuck State Park. I'm Rachel Easton, the Education Director for Harbor Wild Watch, and we have an amazing low tide today. It's almost a -3 foot, which is 3 vertical feet below the average of all the low tides. So I'm headed out now to see what interesting creatures we can find. So let me flip it around and give you a little view of what it looks like here. So this is Kopachuck State Park. We just walked down the hill. I'm saying goodbye to a little preschool group. We did a beach field trip here today. It was fantastic. We got to show them all kinds of really cool animals, and they were quite captivated and very well behaved. I really love when I can interact with the younger kids because you can kind of set their behavior patterns a lot easier than you can with like some of the older groups. So we're looking across here at, this is Cut's Island, locally known as Dead Man's Island, because there's no water on it. But there is a really thin channel across. I walked there once as a kid from here. I walked all the way around and walked to the island at low tide and then got stranded out there. And this is pre-cell phones. And luckily I was able to flag down a boater and he gave my friend and I a ride back home. So we're at the lowest point of the tide right now. So this is what a -3 looks like. Apologies for the wind noise. There is no protection here, so the wind really kind of whips by at this area. About 65 degrees Fahrenheit right now, and the visibility in the water is really, really clear, which is pretty great. So you can see all kinds of things flitting about. So this is in Gig Harbor, Washington. Kopachuck State Park is the name of this place. Here we've got a moon snail egg collar. So this is laid by female moon snails. They will extrude this sand and mucus mixture with a layer of eggs in the middle. And there's roughly 500,000 eggs in each one. And they'll kind of push these to the top and leave them on the sand to kind of be weathered by the incoming and outgoing tide. After about 6 weeks or so, they'll hatch and little larval snails will come out. So we did find one big moon snail earlier today, so if I remember where that is, so we can walk along and find it. But what a gorgeous day. We saw moon snails and a few sea stars earlier, lots of red rock crabs, fair amount of clams, all the usual stuff.
That's awesome.
Not too many. More around the corner, there's a few. Good luck. Oh, here's a big, this is one of the clam species, one of the bigger clam species that we have here. This is a horse clam. So really, really large animal. This is one that people are going after for food. Oh, there's so many little sculpin hanging out in the water right at the edge. So unfortunately, one of the side effects of this beach being open for clamming is that we get these big holes, which you would think wouldn't be a bad thing because it creates these little puddles where maybe animals could shelter, use it like a tide pool. But what they do is they disrupt all the animals, all the benthic things, the creatures living down in the sand, and destroys their whole habitat for them, which has negative implications for kind of everything else that's here at the beach too. So not my favorite thing to see during clamming season. The regulation is that you're required to fill your holes, but not everyone does. Another thing that drives me crazy is when they just walk along with their shovels and take little divots out. And I get it, shovels are heavy, but it drives me crazy because that's one of the things that I do is I read the patterns in the sand to know where animals are hiding, and that screws me up. It's not necessarily harmful to the beach to do those little divots, but it drives me crazy. If you want to post in the comments where you're watching from, I love to know that information. Again, this is Gig Harbor, Washington. We're at Kopachuck State Park, looking across at Cut's Island. Clamming is open, so there's a number of families out here. Speaking of clams, just saw water squirt up. So clams will have those holes that go down into the sand compared to like a worm burrow, which is going to stick out and up from the sand. I'm doing my best to block that wind noise, so apologies if it's too blustery for you. And also apologies for the terrible cinematography. This is not my steadiest camera work because I'm watching where I'm putting my feet. So as I'm walking along through these puddles, I'm making sure not to step on things like this little hermit crab that's here. There are tons and tons of sand dollars at this location. I'm avoiding stepping on them. So speaking of sand dollars, here's a bunch of baby sand dollars right here. These are just little juveniles. They'll grow up to be nice big palm-sized animals, and they're everywhere. So you can kind of see those little disruptions. They're one of the species that gets disturbed when people are climbing out here. So we just had about 20 preschool early kindergartners out here, and they were great. They asked the best questions. I got shown every sand dollar on this entire beach because every kid needed to show me, which is great. I mean, that's how you make memories, right? That's why we do what we do. Harbor Wild Watch is a nonprofit who does environmental education, and our goal is really to inspire stewardship for this body of water, and through education is how we do that. So our goal is really, we want people to see what's here and understand why it's vital and important and worth protecting. Already our tide is coming in. You can actually see it flowing here. It kind of comes across this little high spot. All the little fish. These are mostly tidal sculpins, maybe some fluffy sculpins as well. Little bottom dweller fish with no swim bladder that can easily just sort of sit along the edges without drawing too much attention. This is eelgrass here, a really important habitat. And then again, more sand dollars. So all those tiny little divots in the sand are baby sand dollars. There's millions and millions of them here. All right, so yeah, with our tide coming back in, I might be having to race so that I don't get stuck out here. Here we go. Here's a crab. This is a red rock crab, and this one's burrowed down in, which is pretty typical of what a lot of crabs do during the low tide. They want to hide, they want to be protected, and really they'll leave just like their antenna and their face out. Got a plumose anemone here on maybe a shell, just starting to open and up now that the tide's coming back. Look at all the little fish swimming away. So fun. So this is my third day in a row of being on the beach. Oh, this is super encouraging. Even though it's a bunch of little dead sand dollars, this is super encouraging because I know this is one of the feeding strategies that's used by the sunflower sea stars, a species that has been in decline recently due to sea star wasting disease, and it's taken their population down to about 4% of what it was in 2013. But this is one of the ways that they feed, is they just crawl along, they'll grab just a whole handful of those sand dollars and digest them, and then they spit out the tests or the skeletons when they're done. All the fish. Can you guys see them? They just look like little zooming tadpoles. This is Kopachuck State Park in Gig Harbor, Washington. And it's about a negative 2.9 at this location today, and it's just turning and beginning the flood tide where the water's gonna move all the way back up. Oh, here's another red rock crab buried in here. And we've got moon snail egg collars, which means there must be moon snails around. It's gorgeous here, Auden. I wish you were still here in town. I could show you this beach. It's very different from what we saw the other day. Oh, here's a big red rock crab. All right, let's go check this one out. So this is a large male red rock crab. Cancer productus is their scientific name. And I know that it's a male from those really, really big claws up in the top. If I were to flip it over and show you their abdominal sort of tail flap, it would be tall and pointed and wouldn't touch the legs on either side. Unlike the females, which have to carry eggs, they have a really wide tail flap that touches their legs. So this crab is very nicely showing off the speediest method that crabs use, which is to run sideways. Their leg joints are oriented side to side like this, so this is the fastest that they can go. And I used to call this the crabbiest of all the crab species. It's really like, I used to say it was an aggressive crab, but really it's not aggressive, it's defensive. It's not going to come after you and attack, but if I go after it, surely it will. I'm not squeezing those legs towards each other. I'm not stressing the joints, just lifting and kind of positioning there. What you don't want to do is grab them where those pinchers can reach, because they absolutely will pinch you. It's also safe to touch them like on the back half right here, so you can always touch a crab here because those big meaty claws can't reach beyond this carapace. Some people will try to hold it here on the edge of the shell, but then you risk getting pinched between the arms and the carapace, which kind of hurts. So I like my method. And some people just go in and grab the claws and hold the animal by the claws, which is not the safest way, because if you lose your grip at all, the other claw is coming for you. You gotta be really careful. So this is kind of an eelgrass habitat. I'm going very slowly and kind of erratically. I'm sure I look like I'm drunk out here walking along. Can't really walk a straight line at the beach because you're watching for what you're avoiding here at the beach. There's a little bit of, this is called soda straw algae. It's one of my most favorites to find. Oh, here's another big horse clam shell. So full-size horse clam is similar to a geoduck, but the horse clam is going to have a more oval-shaped shell, so it kind of bulges outward this way. A geoduck would be more squared off, and the top opening on this is angled compared to this this hinge side. It's kind of angled upward. A geoduck is going to be kind of squared off. So that's kind of the main difference between those two. This tide is coming in fast. So you can kind of see this scuzzy layer that develops here. It's just from proteins in the water, so animals pooping or uneaten food or spawned creatures, all of that kind of contributes to this organic material that then foams and makes this kind of bubbles on this top surface. Oh, here's a cool find. Okay, so this is a Krangen shrimp, or smooth bay shrimp they're called. And this is one, he's really warm right now. The water's been warming up in the sun, so he might not do it, but they blend in spectacularly and bury themselves into the sand. And he says, no, I'm just gonna hang out here. Thank you for all the likes. That really does help to let TikTok know that this is a worthwhile live stream, and they'll push it out to more people. And because we're a nonprofit, we need all the help we can get from folks who are engaging with our content. We never know where our next major donor is going to come from. It could be you or somebody you know or somebody you share it with. And because we're a nonprofit, that's one of the ways that we fund ourselves, is through private donations. You can do that on our website, harborwildwatch.org. It's tax deductible. You can give gifts through TikTok. I think my live stream on Friday we made 51 cents, which is pretty good. So I'll take it. More moonsnail collars. Unfortunately, the moonsnails are like right out there, so we don't know if we'll be able to get to them before the tide pushes me back. Keep your eye on the tide. although it's not a very like wave swept area, I don't really have to worry about like a sneaker wave or anything like that coming up and swamping me. I do have to pay attention to the tide because it's very easy to get stuck. Oh, here's a dead crab. I can tell it's dead because it's floating, which means it's starting to decompose in there. It's probably really stinky. Here's a mussel shell. Mussels are a bivalve. They have really cool byssal threads is how they attach. And people are studying byssal threads for how to make waterproof adhesives. So how do you make something that can glue underwater? Because mussels do it very easily. But that would be a very handy application for us for like dentistry. If you had new glues that were safer or easier or cheaper to produce, that would be pretty helpful. And that's the idea of kind of biomimicry, where we take biology and all the ways in which millions of years of evolution have shaped biology, and we can borrow from it, inspire our own engineering. Yeah, lots of scuzz in the water, and a lot of that is because it's springtime, and so there's animals that are spawning out here. Another moon snail egg collar. There's about half a million eggs in each one. Oh, here's a moon snail. I think. Oh no, it's just a clam. Just a clam. False alarm. Just kidding. I got excited about this clam shell. This is the eastern sapshell clam, which is, I guess, kind of cool on its own. It's a really thin shell that has this kind of material on the outside of it. It scrapes off. You can write your name on it. I used to do that as a kid. And then still so many sand dollars. Just millions and millions of little baby sand dollars here. So let me show you what I mean. Just take a handful of sand. There you go. Tons of little babies. So sand dollars are essentially flattened sea urchins with smaller reduced spines. All right, I'm going to flip these guys back over. I can tell that which way they go because they have a tan. So they're darker on their top surface, where they have developed some pigment to help protect them from the sun. So I'll give these all a flip. They can flip themselves over, it just takes a while. So since I unflipped them, I should return them the way that I found them. Seems like the nice thing to do. But they are everywhere on this beach. All those little black, you can kind of see puddles or piles of them. Those are all sand dollars. And they're not just on the surface either. They go down, in some cases, as deep as 2 feet down. That's a lot of sand dollars. So this eelgrass habitat is one of the most important nursery habitats. And right now the eelgrass is getting ready. And so it's a true plant. It has roots, stems, leaves, even flowers, and has seeds. So see how this is like one really long? These ones are really long compared to the shorter ones that kind of all grow to the same length. These are the flower stems. And it's just like grass flowers. It looks like a little bit of wheat tucked up in there. I don't think I can, it's not quite ripe enough to peel open to show you. But it can spread via rhizomes, like a lot of grasses, or it makes seeds, which means it has underwater pollen and underwater flowers, which is just wild to think about. Oh, here's an algae that's not native to here. This is called sargassum weed, and this is the Japanese variety that was introduced alongside oysters. So they brought oysters and they wrapped them in this to keep them from drying out on their voyage across the Pacific. And they dumped them here because they grow really well here. And the thinking was that, hey, they need warmer water over the winter to be able to survive. So the ones that we bring here won't be able, the adults will survive, but the larvae won't. So they won't take over. Well, that was true until we had some warm water weather. And they were able to spawn, and their larva was able to survive and naturalized into this habitat, and it does compete with our native species. It's not truly invasive because we still consider it a good thing to have oysters. We'd rather have non-native oysters than no oysters, but when they get to the point that they are out competing our native oyster species, that's when it becomes a problem for us. And we're kind of there. Oh, it's a feather duster tube worm, and it's got its little tube out. So if I touch it, it will go in. So this is the corona, the feeding crown that they use to eat. And then when they're touched, they jump right back in their tube to protect themselves, because everything loves to eat worms. So fish will come along and try to take a nibble, and the worm jumps in their protective tube. And then when the coast is clear, they come right back up. So getting a little bit cloudier water here on this side. Oh, here's some fish eggs on a little bit of algae. Just drifting by. I have no idea what kind of fish eggs those are, so don't ask. Oh, okay, check it out. We've got a hermit crab here in a moon snail shell. This is probably a black-eyed hermit crab because they're about the only hermit I know of that is large enough to fill this shell. Oh, it is. It's a black-eyed hermit crab. So this is a really cool animal. And this moon snail shell that it's in is broken and misshapen and definitely a bit too big for this creature. So hermit crabs have a soft, squishy abdomen towards the back that allows them to kind of withdraw it all the way within the snail shell and hold on. And then as they grow, they have to find larger shells. So to grow their own body, they will molt. So they'll come out of their hard carapace. When I put hermit crabs back, I like to burp their shells, let the bubbles out. Such a cool animal. I love them. I wish I was collecting today because I would absolutely take you home, my friend, but I didn't bring any of my gear. I don't have my permits with me, so we will just let you go on your way. Actually, just kidding. Hold on. All right, I think we're back. Sorry for that, folks. I wanted to document the species for iNaturalist, and I made a quick TikTok too, so you guys can watch that later. So yeah, very cool find. I'm delighted when I find those big hermit crabs. They are so fun. Excuse me. I got a throat tickle. So this is Kopachuck State Park, and these big holes that we're seeing everywhere are from clammers. Folks who dig holes, they're supposed to fill the holes. So this is really annoying to me. I just leave this because this is really disruptive to the animals that live down in that soil, and they often can't like replant themselves. So it's discouraging. But let's go check out this rock, because rocks are a really good permanent structure, and so quite often you can find different animals on the rocks than you would in the sandier stretches where things are always ever changing. This rock is what we call a glacial erratic. It was left here, like all of the substrate here, by glaciers during the Ice Age. Pushed down from Canada and then just deposited wherever they were. Like there's a clam right here and right here. I think if I poke it and water shoots out. Oh yeah, we got a clam here. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, I deserved that. Those are clams. They are what people are here digging for, and they are filter feeders. So they squirt water or bring water into their bodies and then squirt it out. And they do that to take a breath, to get, fresh oxygenated water into their bodies. And they also do it if they're threatened like that. So just like the tube worm goes in, if a predator approaches it, they'll go in too. Here's another red rock crab. Are you alive? I would assume that you would be hiding if you were alive. well, yeah, we do the sniff test, and not alive here. But the barnacles that are living on this shell are still alive, and so they'll begin coming out to feed here shortly. As soon as they're underwater, these ones are beginning to come out. You can kind of see those barnacles, and barnacles cover everything, but they're not always surviving. So on these smaller rocks, the rocks that get kind of tumbled by the surf or get bashed about, they have larval barnacles on them. All these little dots here are tiny barnacles. Those are like last year's barnacles. And then you have places where barnacles have died. So if it's a large barnacle, it'll leave like a kind of a base plate, or you might find like more recently dead barnacles that have open volcanoes. But here's some barnacles that are feeding. They eat with their feet. They have like little eyelash feet. I think 10 of them that come out. I think technically they're called cirri, but they are analogous to legs. So I like to say they eat with their feet. And they're crustaceans. A lot of people don't realize that barnacles are crustaceans, because we think of crustaceans as having jointed legs and moving around. And these do have jointed legs. They just don't move once they're in their final location. They do have a planktonic larval phase though. So they do get to drift around in the sea for a little while before they stick down, and then they're stuck forever. So this is a bed of sugar kelp, named because it has saccharin molecule within it. There's also some different red algae in here. This one is called red spaghetti. Sarcothedia gouty chowdy, I think, is the scientific name. Succulent seaweed is another way to refer to it. This beach is closed to seaweed harvesting because they're trying to establish these kelp beds here. Because if you have a lot of kelp, you'll have a lot of other animals. And if people overharvest it, then you kind of wipe out that ecosystem, which we don't want. So it's closed. So state parks in Washington state are funded through a parking pass system called the Discovery Pass. So it's, I think, $30 a year. Maybe it's $35 if you buy it online, or $10 a day. Dead female red rock crab here. Showing that this is like the abdomen where she would hold her eggs. So these little feathery branches are gonna like hold on to and keep the eggs safe until they hatch. So once they hatch, she just sort of shakes them loose, and they're planktonic for a time. And after that, they receive no parental care or anything. They just drift around, and the ones that survive a couple of different metamorphoses, those will become little crabs. Oh, here it is. This means we're getting to be spring here. This little yellow ball of snot is bubble snail eggs. We saw one nudibranch today, a striped nudibranch. One of the moms found it. She was like, I think I found like a slug. Do we have slugs here? I was like, yeah, sea slugs. Oh yeah, okay. So we got to show that to the kids. And they're kind of an interesting slug because instead of having their gill plume on their back, they spend time on the sandy substrate, and they'll actually like burrow down in. And so their gills are tucked along the edges of their body. They're kind of like lateral gills instead. A couple more broken moon snail shells. I like to investigate, see if anybody's home. Oh, okay, so this is what people are digging out here. This is a horse clam. This is the siphon of the horse clam here. It is an absolutely gorgeous day. Like, what a perfect day for a low tide. I'm out at Kopachuck State Park in Gig Harbor, Washington, and this is a horse clam. So this is the siphon here. There's two holes. One pulls water in and one squirts water out. This sort of horny substance on the outside is gonna be the main distinguishing characteristic that I use for this species, because it kind of narrows down the neck, and this has a more forceful spray because of that. So if it's disturbed, Oh, and he says, I don't really want to go down. There you go. Give it a gentle touch, and he says, goodbye. If you poke them hard, they will go down more forcefully and squirt. I've had them squirt like 5 feet in the air or more. And then tons and tons of sand dollars. This beach is kind of always changing a little bit. I'm noticing like the area I'm at right now along the shore, it's very sandy here, but it's lower than it has been typically in the past. So you can kind of see the slope of the beach over there. It mounds up. That's where most of the larger sand dollars are. These are all the babies. Just, you know, I mean, maybe they're sand dimes or sand nickels. Even smaller than that, but I can show you some big ones too, because there are tons and tons of sand dollars here. Sand dollars are essentially flattened urchins. So if you picture a spiny ball with all of those long spines of a sea urchin, but you compress it down like a cookie, that's basically a sand dollar. Trying to get excited about something, and it turns out it's a pine cone. It's a fir cone. But here's a bunch of sand dollars here. Oh, and a sea star. Hello, little mottled star. So we'll talk about our mottled star first, I guess. So this is a sea star that is pretty common intertidally. They're carnivorous, like all the other sea stars are. They eat whatever they can find. So this one tends to be really sturdy and tough, and so can withstand being out of the water for hours on end. And so they thrive here in the intertidal zone. This is Evasterius treshellii, and one really great thing about them is right here on the top, this is called their madreporite, and it allows seawater into their body system, so they can use it as their blood. They don't have their own blood. They use seawater. And then their relatives, the sand dollars here. Got a little divot. He had an injury and has repaired it. Let's see if I can find a few others to show you. So I like to call these the disco balls of the intertidal because they sparkle in the sunlight and reflect with their many, many spines. Their top surface is typically dark, and their underside is a little bit more light because they have a suntan. So on a living sand dollar, they will never show you their mouth. Let me see if I can find a dead sand dollar. It's been dead a long time. It's got barnacles all over it, but on the underside, the dead sand dollar, that hole in the center is their mouth. Living sand dollars will never show you their mouth. They keep it covered. So here's another bed of just, thousands of them, right? So you can also see that sea star pattern on the back. That's their kind of vestigial hint to their long lost relatives, the other echinoderms, the sea stars. So they have radial symmetry in adulthood, but they also have bilateral symmetry in their larval phase, which is kind of interesting. And in this species anyway, the way to tell living ones from dead ones, you can do so by color. So if it's dark black or purple, it's typically alive. If it's tan or white, those are the dead ones. And then sometimes you get broken ones that don't know whether they're living or not. So this one clearly doesn't have enough of its body to survive. It's not going to recover from this, but it's still moving and sparkling because the cells on the outside haven't died yet. So zombies. And that is really common with animals that don't have a brain. They don't know when they're dead. I see dead people. They don't know that they're dead. Yeah, here sand dollar harvest is prohibited, so I have no problem telling people that you can't take that. And if they still try to take it, we are not an enforcement agency, but I have the ranger's number on speed dial, and they get good fines from it, so they love it when I report the poachers. So I will do so. But usually my first line of attack? My first tactic is to inform. So that's really what we want to do is, and you know, I can appreciate that people want a souvenir. They had a good memory at the beach and they want something to take home to remember that by. But when they realize that you're killing a creature for your own, you know, curiosities or your own memories, that seems kind of not in the right vein. So usually I can educate people out of their decisions, but sometimes they're determined, and then I call in the backup. Lots of little fish here. These are mostly tideful sculpin, little bottom dweller fish that swim along, and they hug the shore because the bigger fish are out there. What a gorgeous day. I mean, this is just exquisitely beautiful out here. You can collect the dead ones on, I mean, this is a state park, so technically, you know, you're not supposed to collect anything. It'd be the equivalent to like going to a state park and cutting down the flowers to take home with you. That it doesn't kill the plant, but it's not leaving the park the same as you found it. So we tend to discourage that. They're less strict about that when it comes to shells because there are so many. It's less critical, but still, we like to promote that idea of leaving no trace, leaving it better than you found it. I'm constantly hauling things up and then finding trash in my pockets when I do my laundry later. It's like, oh, what is this? Oh, Rachel went to the beach. Rachel picked up some stuff and forgot to stop by the trash can. Oh, here we go. So the winds are picking up now. You can see how dark those clouds are across the way. Well, those are going to be some rain clouds. In fact, it's raining on that side over there, that's about where I live, actually. So we're looking across at the Key Peninsula. You can see just the barest peaks of the Olympic Mountains over there. When it comes to glass, if it's sharp, I do consider it litter, and I will remove it before animals try to live on it, if it's safe for me to do so. If it's already begun to kind of cloud over and become sea glass, it's essentially inert, so it is less offensive to the environment. I mean, the creatures will treat it like it's a rock, so I don't mind so much. Plus, sea glass is really fun to collect, and I can appreciate that. From, you know, my little collector self as a kid, we would always hunt for sea glass, and if people never picked up their glass, then there wouldn't be any of that. But a lot of sea glass actually comes from people who used to dump. We thought the oceans could handle all of our trash if we just kept dumping. They're so vast, they're so big, what does it matter if a problem goes away here? Well, we didn't really realize we were just pushing it off. But all the other things, the degradable things degraded, the rusted things rusted, but the glass remained because it's inert. So I was actually out at a beach in Tacoma last week and found a beautiful cobalt blue Vicks Vapor Rub tonic from like the early 1900s. So that was kind of cool to find beautiful blue glass. But it was in the mud, so it hadn't really frosted over like sea glass. It just became like an old bottle. But yeah, if I'm out at the beach and there's like a beer bottle, I'll pick it up if it doesn't have things living on it. If it does have life on it, I will leave it typically. If it's really sharp and I don't think I can like safely get it home, I will bury it. That's another way, because then it'll kind of get ground down by the gravel and the force of the waves over time. But yeah, that's a great question. There goes my sunshine behind the clouds. It just got like 10 degrees colder out here. The water's picking up as the tide changes. The currents change direction often, and then the wind is picking up a little bit here. So it's about to be a little stormier. Look how dark that water looks. So cool. thank you to everybody who's liking and commenting and sharing. I do appreciate it. We are a nonprofit, and our mission is to inspire stewardship, and we can only do that as far as we can reach. And the more you like and share and comment, the further our reach is. And I love when people, it happened to me today when somebody's like, wait a second, Harbor Wildlife, I follow you guys on TikTok. Which is fantastic. I was at the local brewery last night, and somebody said, hey, I recognize you guys, which is great because not everybody, is able to come to our field trips or visit our nature center. Sometimes the hours don't match up, but those people still have a role to play in the conservation of this place. So we like to take every opportunity we can to reach as many people. So you are helping us by engaging with our content. So thank you for that. I would encourage you to follow us on our other social media accounts as well. We're on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. Our entire beach schedule is available on Facebook. So you can RSVP to those dates that you want to come explore the beach with us. And those are free programs. And we are able to offer those for free because we write a lot of grants and we have generous donors. So if that's you and you want to support the work we do of supporting the Salish Sea, by all means, head over to our website, harborwildwatch.org. You can make a donation. You can donate through Venmo, or you can give us gifts through TikTok. That does help us too, and that goes to support our program. So I think grand total from TikTok, we've brought in about $2,000 in 3 years. So we're not making tons of money here, but we are reaching a lot of people. So thank you for being a part of that with us. I'm going to take us over to the oyster beds over here so we can see what's here. This is a non-native species of oyster that's been brought in. This is the Japanese oyster. And it's a money-making venture for the state parks. So they can sell shellfish licenses. They bring in the oysters they come in on a high tide on a barge, and they just dump them out. So you can kind of see that layer of white over here. And that has been going on for a long, long time. I think oysters were first introduced to this area in about 1910 or so. And unfortunately, they used to not be able to reproduce here in the Salish Sea because our water temperature over the winter got too cold and the tolerance for the larvae is pretty narrow. But we've had some climate change and some global warming and warming oceans that has impacted the ability of these things to reproduce. And so we are seeing more and more survival of that larva, which is not great because they outcompete our native oyster, the Olympia oyster. I think on our website we have information about that because we just completed a study about Olympia oysters and what eats them and how we can farm them and kind of what's the best course for trying to restore them. So these are all the oysters here. And this is, the rule is you must leave the shells here because the oyster shells are good habitat for one. Oh, here's a piece of the lip of a horse clam. Interesting. So you leave the oysters here. The oysters are habitat. The oyster shells are a great place for things like barnacles to grow. In fact, you can see all the little specks on here are larval barnacles that settled in on here. So oysters will also settle. The larvae of both the Olympia oyster and the Japanese oyster are planktonic for a time. They have these little veliger larvae that come and swim through the waters and settle out on kind of anywhere that's suitable. And they're programmed to settle out where there are oyster shells because adult oysters don't move. If there's oyster shells there, it must be a place that sustains oysters. And so that's a good life decision if you're deciding to settle down. Kind of like choosing to live in a neighborhood versus the wilderness if you're a human. Like, yeah, you might be able to take your chances in the wilderness. It might be just fine. Or you could be in a neighborhood where it's proven that people can live. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but I haven't really thought about it too much. And then down in here we have like really silty sand. It's actually quite stinky over in this side of the beach because the particles of sand are really, really small. And this kind of has that characteristic low tide smell over here. And it's because of a bacteria that can only live in anaerobic environments, so where there's no oxygen, because there's so much, such fine sediment. And then tons of animals live in it too. So when you see these holes here, if it's a hole that goes downward, that's going to be, so these are clams here. If it's a hole that goes upward, like a little volcano, this is a worm, because worms excavate their burrows and push that material outward and make a little pile. Somewhere else around here there is the other side. They usually have U-shaped burrows, if it's a lugworm anyway. And then the clams are just below the surface. And then around them is just pockets of anaerobic habitat where the bacteria grow. If you've ever seen like black sand where it looks really, really like rich and black and super stinky, that's what I'm talking about here. Here's another non-native species. This is a purple varnish clam. It's a beautiful color on the inside. Sometimes they're called mahogany clams because the outside is mahogany, and they look like they've been varnished on the outside. And this is one that is a bit of a useful clam because this species tends to hold on to toxins for longer than our native clam species. So when the health department comes and samples the clams to tell us if they're safe, if they have, buildup of various, red tides or things we want to watch out for, they can use this species and be extra safe because they hold on to it for longer. Butter clams are the other species that they tend to test. And butter clams, they concentrate whatever toxins they have in their bodies up in the top part of their siphon. And so you can measure that in the laboratory. And the health department does do shellfish testing pretty much all year round. Oh, look at all the little fish. You see all the little ripples in the water? Those are all little babies. Little baby fishies. Let's see how far we can walk out here. Whenever the changeover of the tide happens, the water gets fairly scuzzy for a time until it gets high enough that we really get good flushing with all this water that goes by. And it's a gorgeous day. This is Gig Harbor, Washington. We're out at Kopachuck State Park, looking across at the Olympic Mountains. That's the Key Peninsula on that side. And then kind of around the corner would be like Tacoma from here. And it's beautiful. Like, oh my gosh, don't tell anyone. It's so beautiful here. I am a marine biologist. I guess technically my degree is I just studied general biology, but in practice, I practice on marine things. This is what I study. This is where I'm educated on. So I would consider myself a marine biologist. I guess if somebody really wants to fight me, they could, and this is my job. I'm the education director, so my job is to educate people. So thanks for helping me do my job. Oh, these clouds are looking a little ominous. Can't tell what direction they're coming. We don't have too many cone-shaped mollusks at all. There are some like tusk-shelled. Oh my gosh, there's so many little fishies right here. They're all little baby sculpin. They look like little tadpoles, don't they? So there are some like tusk shells that are kind of vaguely cone-shaped. Ooh, it's really mushy right here. That tells me that this area is infiltrated by, most likely infiltrated by ghost shrimp. They burrow down under the surface and make it really, really mushy. I don't remember what I was saying. Sorry. Oh yeah, gotta have the extra tough. So these are the best boots ever had. And I particularly like mine because they have seaweed on the inside. They've got rockweed pattern. And that suits me just fine because algae and kelp is my favorite thing. Yes, this is Kopachuck State Park. If you're local to our area, I would invite you to come out with us to one of our public programs. You can follow along on our Facebook page. We have a calendar of events there of when we'll be on the beach, and you can get a guided tour. I'll show you all the cool things and then teach you a few ways that you can protect it. Oh, it's so pretty. Oh, you know what? I always forget that I have this. I have a polarized lens cover here. Hold on, let me get it out here. I'll try not to drop it in the water. And it doesn't work so well. So I have this little clip-on polarized lens. Let's see. That cuts the glare any for us. And I can kind of turn it. So look at that. Super glary. And then I can turn it and then the glare goes away. Isn't that amazing? Oh, I just love that we have the ability to do that. Somebody said, hey, you know, if we just make all the light go in the same direction, then it doesn't glare so much. Okay, so let me talk about the moon snail egg collar. This is this sandy, weird, it looks like some kind of crazy toilet plunger maybe, or some weird pottery. This is the egg casing of the moon snail. So female snails will extrude sand and mucus on this side and sand and mucus on the other side, and it kind of conforms to her foot. And so the center hole is the size of the shell, and then the width of the the widest part is the width of her foot. So that's what we're looking at here. And there's about like 500,000 eggs in there, which most of those will not survive. They are going to be plankton, and plankton gets eaten by everything. So here's a plankton right here. This is a feather duster tube worm that captures plankton as it drifts by. Oh, check it out. We got a little hermit crab mating happening. So these are 2 hermit crabs. It's either mating or one that's going to swap shells, but my guess is from the position of those 2 shells that that's two hermit crabs. It's going to make more hermit crabs. Oh, and there's a Krangen shrimp right here too. This little clear guy. Oh, was a Krangen shrimp. There. Oh, there's another one. So they're really good at blending in. I should repost the video I made of them burrowing down, or you should all just go to YouTube, check it out. So they blend in, they're kind of colored to match the sand, and then they can wiggle and do it, wiggle and cover themselves up completely. This is a paid actor, by the way. I owe him some food. I'll pay him in sand dollars. There likely are some little anemones here. Oh, speaking of moon snails, we got some evidence of moon snails. This is a bent nose clam because the shell kind of does that little swoop off to the side. But down here by the hinge, there is this countersunk hole, which is the mark left by the moon snail's radula. So they have a tongue that's like a chainsaw, it scrapes and scrapes and scrapes, and that's what they eat, is clams. All right, well, it's getting darker, and looking at these clouds thinking, well, I'm gonna get wet on the walk to the car. So I'm gonna leave you with this beautiful island still in the sunshine, and I think I'm gonna hightail it out of here before these storm clouds come, because it's getting a bit chilly. The wind is picking up. So thanks everybody for tuning in with us. I really do appreciate when I get such an awesome audience. Again, I'm Rachel. I'm the education director for Harbor Wild Watch. I encourage you to follow us on our other social media channels so that you can, know what's up and what's happening. We've got a really fun low tide schedule coming up on Facebook. Those are public events. They're free. You should come check them out. You can also come visit us at our nature center right in downtown Gig Harbor, very close, about an hour south of Seattle. So come visit us. We would love to see you. Oh, and thank you for the gifts. Y'all are wonderful. Okay, let's see if I can make my way up off the beach now. There's a harbor seal right here. Let's see if I can flip this around and see if we can see it. Now that I have the camera pointed at it, it's not going to show up. Rude. Harbor seal, very rude. kind of wrapped up our field trip and all the kids are headed home, and I'm in line waiting with some kids while their mom uses the bathroom. And I'm just staring at the water, and way across the bay, like all the way over there, just saw like a big fin come up and go down. And sure enough, it was an orca whale. Small pod of orcas came through. It was really, really cool. Thank you. You all are so wonderful. Thank you for the gifts. This is fantastic. Again, we're a nonprofit. All the ways that you engage with our content, liking, sharing, comments, all of that is so helpful to us. But when you give us money directly, that is extra, extra helpful. All right, friends, I gotta wrap this up and go before these big black clouds come my way. So, thanks for hanging in with me. I got my dumb hat, so you know it's summertime, low tide season. Thanks for hanging out. I do appreciate all of you, and hopefully the weather's good and I can bring you another great low tide walk tomorrow. Go comment on our other videos where you think we should go. All right, talk with you soon. Bye, everyone.